Budding Smiles, and this is my first ever video blog, so please be gentle with me. I'm a little bit nervous, I don't like being on this side of the camera. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about Toby's diagnosis of silent reflux and the treatment that he's on for it. The reason I've decided to do a video blog for this instead of just a normal written one is really because there's so much to it and it's been such an emotional time that I think it's probably easier to kind of say all of that out loud rather than writing it down. Otherwise I'll end up doing some sort of big dissertation style essay which no one is going to want to read through. So anyway, those of you who follow me on Twitter or who read my blog will probably know quite a bit about Toby's diagnosis. He is now coming up 3 months old and he was diagnosed at about 6 weeks old. We'd had all the health checks with the health visitor and we'd had the 6-week checkup with the GP, and everyone had just kind of said, yeah, he's a bit of a grizzly baby, but he seems absolutely fine, there's no problem. And I guess we just accepted it really. He he was feeding really well, he was piling on weight, and it just seemed he's quite an unsettled baby, but some babies are. It was only really, I think, about 6 weeks just after his checkup with the GP that we started realising that during or after feeds he would sound like he was going to be sick and then swallow it all back down again. And I guess I kind of noticed that I could feel his belly grumbling. I was still exclusively breastfeeding at that point, and I'd already mentioned to the health visitor that he would come off screaming, sometimes not unlatching first, which was obviously really painful for me as well, and it was just heartbreaking seeing him screaming like that. And then I kind of realised that I could feel his tummy burbling, that I could hear him like he was going to be sick, as I say. And when I then phoned the health visitor and kind of told her all of these things, she just instantly said, oh, sounds like silent reflux. And it really was as simple as that, which I'm really pleased about, because having spoken to other bloggers whose children have got silent reflux, apparently it can be misdiagnosed as colic a good amount of the time, because unlike active reflux where the baby is actually being sick a lot and losing weight and things like that, silent reflux can be a lot harder to really diagnosed because there's fewer noticeable symptoms anyway. So I phoned the GP and Toby was put onto baby Gaviscon. We tried that and I think he was on it for about 4 or 5 days, and that was probably the worst time. It was just awful. From the moment he was on it, the acid didn't seem to get any better, his stomach pains were a lot worse. He was scrunching his legs up, barely feeding for more than a couple of minutes without pulling away, absolutely screaming. And we're talking like 8-10 hours a day of crying, which was just awful. I was in tears all the time. My husband would come home from a hard day at work. I'd be at my wit's end because I'd looked after a screaming baby all day. And then it was like we're both just exhausted, and then going through the night and everything. It was just a really tough time. He also then was constipated, went through about, again, that whole 4 or 5 days without opening his bowels, and then when he finally did, it was pretty much solid. It was just absolutely not what a newborn baby's poo should be, especially a breastfed one. So we made the decision, it was over the weekend so we couldn't get hold of the GP, we made the decision ourselves that the Gaviscon had to stop. It was just horrific, and it maybe would have been helping with the acid, but we couldn't tell any benefit from it because of how bad it was making Toby's stomach, and obviously nothing is worse than seeing your baby in that much pain. So on Monday I phoned the GP back again. Luckily it wasn't our regular GP who I spoke to, because let's just say our regular GP is less than helpful from previous experience. So we spoke to a really, really lovely GP who then got us an emergency appointment for that afternoon. So I took Toby down there. It was the day he was also having his first jabs, so it was a fun day. And we went to see the GP after he'd had his jabs, and he was prescribed omeprazole, which I'd never heard of before, but then since talking to other people, my mum was on it for acid, and apparently people were saying to me it's a really, really good one, and it's very rarely prescribed by GPs. Apparently it's normally only paediatric consultants who are allowed to prescribe it. So again, I think we've been really, really lucky to get straight onto a good medicine. straight away. So since then, Toby's been on 4 milligrams of omeprazole, which we dissolve into water in a syringe, cooled boiled water, first thing in the morning before he has his big feed. So we sort of get out of bed, give him his syringe, and then he has his feed maybe an hour later. And I would say we started to see some improvements fairly quickly actually, and no side effects, so I can't really complain about it. It's really easy to give. Toby actually seems to enjoy it now. He sees the syringe, sees me drawing up the water, and his little arms and legs are going crazy. I think he's associating it with feeling better, so that's really, really good, because I know some people have absolute hell trying to get their children to take medicine. So we did start to see improvements quite quickly, but normally still by sort of lunchtime, early afternoon, Toby would start to get unsettled again, and he still was struggling to feed sometimes, and it was still sort of obviously in quite a bit of pain sometimes. So, you know, it wasn't curing it. It was putting a lot of strain on me as well, because I was stubbornly refusing to give up breastfeeding. You know, we went through quite a bit to make it work. Not as much as what some people do, but you know, we've had struggles with getting him to have a good latch when he was first born. He had oral thrush, I had thrush on my nipple, which then turned into deep tissue thrush, and then with the reflux and everything, it was a bit like, okay, seriously, we've finally got breastfeeding down to a T, and now we've got this, and it just seemed like it was one thing after another. So a couple of weeks ago I kind of hit a wall. It was on my birthday, so whether I was just feeling a little bit emotional because of that, I don't know. But I just kind of hit a wall and accepted the fact that in order for me to be sort of the best mum I can be for Toby, and you know, be emotionally strong enough to cope with any bad days that he has, I had to relinquish some of the responsibility. And because by that point Toby seemed to be struggling quite a bit again, and he would be screaming and screaming and screaming, absolutely inconsolable, and it was really, really difficult. So we're now combination feeding. I'm going to do another post that goes into more depth about feeding, so I won't really say too much about that. But we have been combination feeding for a couple of weeks now, and touch wood, it seems to be going quite well. And yeah, it really feels like Toby's sort of turning a corner. So, you know, he does still have his bad days when he does seem to be in quite a lot of pain, but overall I'd say that the omeprazole, alongside using a good bottle as well for the combi feeding, does seem to be helping him. And you know, when it got to a point where he just wasn't smiling, he wasn't laughing, it's not just the crying. I think part of me can deal with the screaming and the crying alright, I suppose. I wouldn't say brilliantly. You know, I did end up in tears quite a lot of the time, and I still do if he has a bad day. I'm an emotional person. But I think the worst part for me personally was just when he stopped smiling. You know, he started smiling pretty much bang on his 6th week, as they say they will do, and then a couple of days later just stopped. And for 2 weeks we had 0 smiles, whereas now, this last couple of weeks, you can really see the happy child behind, you know, reflux and being in pain and things like that. So that's been really lovely, because generally speaking, he's just such a happy little boy and very inquisitive. He needs to know everything that's going on around him, and sometimes he'll just be staring up at the beams in our living room, and all of a sudden he'll just burst out laughing at them. I don't quite know what's so amusing, but he seems to absolutely love them, and it's just really nice to see. As I'm talking about him, it's just really nice to see him smiling again, and he seems to really get a lot of enjoyment out of things now. So we're sort of getting that balance, seems to be getting a lot better. So the times when he seems in pain is coming down, and the times when he seems happy is coming up. So hopefully we're reaching a happy medium now. So I don't really think there's too much else as far as diagnosis and treatment is concerned. This seems to be working. I know there are a lot of other medicines out there, milk thickeners like Carabao and stuff like this. I know a lot of babies are on ranitidine, I think it's called, and for some people the baby Gaviscon works, but for us this is, you know, it seems to be doing the job, so fingers crossed. I'll just go grab him so you can see what a happy little boy he's turned into. Hello. So here he is in his super cool AC/DC ABCD romper that we love. Are you going to give us a smile? So yeah, you know, as you can see, he's just woken up from a nap and he's calm and contented, whereas a couple of weeks ago, basically, if he wasn't asleep, which he doesn't do very well, then he was screaming. And, you know, I would have been stood here constantly doing this because he just wouldn't have been calm at all. So it's nice now, but yeah, I think that's probably about it really. So we shall say goodbye for now. I hope this hasn't been too excruciating to watch. Please be nice, and I'll put links to my website and Twitter and Facebook down below somewhere here. So if you want to get in touch, then please do. See you soon. Bye.